szczeble zarządzania, również na ten szczebel można powiedzieć jak najbardziej przestrzenny, tak więc ja myślę, że dziękuję. Ja powiem tylko, że ktoś kiedyś na jednej z konferencji stwierdził, że nasze miasta przypominają właśnie, że tak powiem, ser wygryziony przez myszy, ale takie przez myszy niejadki, czyli tak troszkę zjedzone, troszkę niekoniecznie, ale tu widzę, mieliśmy tam gryzonia, który działa. Proszę Państwa, serdecznie dziękuję Pani Profesor za to inspirujące wystąpienie. Chciałem w tej chwili oddać głos Pani Profesor Sofii Morgado, reprezentującej Uniwersytet Techniczny w Lizbonie. W związku z tym chciałem oddać głos Pani Profesor Sofii Morgado. Pani Profesor reprezentuje Uniwersytet Techniczny w Lizbonie, zajmuje się problematyką właśnie zarządzania w obszarach metropolitalnych i w związku z tym poprosiliśmy dzisiaj Panią Profesor o wystąpienie na temat doświadczeń Lizbony z zarządzaniem i planowaniem metropolitalnym. So Sofia, the floor is yours, and I just briefly announced who are you and why you are here. Thank you very much for making all your way from distant Portugal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the institutions and public bodies who contributed to the organization of the conference, and especially, of course, to Professor Piotr Lawrence, his team, and Sławek, who has done all of this also. So my presentation is about the city of Lisbon, and I guess it will be a little bit different than the previous one, so I hope I can grasp your attention as well. Especially because I'm going to focus a little bit more on the territorial body of the city rather than the governmental aspects of it. Okay, I use this. So, the presentation has two purposes. The first one, this topic of ideas popping into effective research questions, started when I was challenged by Piotr Lawrence to join you in this conference and to discuss a little bit of what managing growth could be. So my problem here is what is growth and what is a metropolitan area, because I have lots of doubts despite having been working on that for so long, as you all probably are. So the first topic would have to do with this research scope and the metropolitan context. The second one, the City of Lisbon development and plans, and finally some concluding remarks, more questions than conclusions, just to open a possible debate. The main research sources are the ones you can see below, so it's a sort of cross work we are doing right now. One of them has just been finished. So, coming to the popping questions. What is growth? Why do you think achieving it would be good? I'm not sure of that. I think of very large cities and I'm not sure whether growth is good or not. And how fast, how efficiently is growth that good? Growth or maturity? Is larger the same as better? I'm not sure of that either. And what if we could grow into a more resilient capacity to deal with cities? Would be a very nice idea, because cities are very different altogether. So when we look at the globalized world, we can ask ourselves, where are metropolises growing to after all? Because some of them are just decreasing, and some of them are increasing largely, and some of them are becoming more like Swiss cheeses, like my colleague was showing, but from the other way around, with lots of holes within their spaces. So the research scope has to do basically with this post-industrial period in which some paradigmatic changes have been happening, especially when we speak about strategies in urban planning and design. And I would say that when we speak about metropolitan areas, three topics must be discussed. The first one has to do with the territory itself. So, do metropolitan areas have different configuration? What phenomena are we dealing with? And some of our authors, recent authors, have been discussing it and introducing new words, for instance, Zwischenstadt, Città diffusa, Netzstadt. These are all new words that tend to explain these new things that are happening in our metropolises. This doesn't have to do with the built or the infrastructural part, but on the other way around, it has to do with the intermediate spaces which lay in between those features. The second aspect is that when we start doing our literature review, we start discovering that from the middle of the 20th century on, people discussing metropolises suddenly stop discussing about the idea for the city, but rather they start discussing the problems they find in the city. We no longer find beautiful texts written like by Guedes or by, I don't know, Chouet or some of them previously even. But we start being questioned by people who are discussing what can we do about these cities. And this idea of territorialism starts emerging in a very strong way. So I chose to refer a few schools. Some of them are from, for instance, a project for the metropolis is from Barcelona, but we have also Waldheim and Forman, both from Harvard, and Taton, already died, unfortunately, and this concept about metropolitan and regional design in Delft. And the third aspect, I think, is fundamental. It has to do with territorial dynamics, flows, as we usually think. But I would like to address these problems in a rather different way, because actually they interrelate several problems. They interrelate problems dealing with financial issues, transport issues, job issues, and also demographic and societal structural distinctions, let's say it this way. In what the Lisbon, my city, is concerned, it's a medium-sized metropolitan area. It has basically two parts which are important to deal with. I'm going to show it in the maps next. And from the 19 onwards, it starts shifting very dramatically from a model based on the Fordist functional dichotomy between center, periphery, center, industrial job in one place, into something which we can start calling a polycentric system. And this has been clearly stated as an objective in recent planning for the metropolitan territory. So current planning tools address several issues which are very clearly discussed by the EU documents, specifically multi-level and cross-scale coordination, the need to address ecological metropolitan network and an effective metropolitan transport authority, and finally the development of polycentricism. This idea of polycentricism, by the way, was introduced as soon as Sweden entered the EU, because it's a very Scandinavian approach to a national planning system, which may come into a very useful way as well for all of us. But let me show you the development of my city. This is the first time I'm showing this publicly, because this is the result of one of the projects we are still working on. But just to introduce you to my city, we have here the peninsula of Lisbon. Here is the city of Lisbon. Peninsula of Setúbal, and we have one of the largest histories in Europe, in the world even, which is the Tagus history, and also the Sardo history. So when we look at the period between the 40s and 65, what we see is a typical modern city, very much centered into one job center, one here and another one here, which is industrial, and of course the railway lines just shaping the city from the commuting, everyday commuting perspective way into something radio-concentric. This is rather normal. However, when it comes to 65 to 92, what we can start seeing, it's a completely different thing. By this point in the 90s, one of the topics we used to hear the most was dispersion. Dispersion, sprawl, these were the bad guys in the urban phenomena discussion. Of course, in the United States, it started a lot previously. So I remember, for instance, Benton McKay discussing the problem of the liquid urbanism about the railway line, the Appalachian railway line. So somehow, when we go back to our modernist theorics, sometimes they turn into something very erudite, ideas that they grasped when they arrived to the United States. For instance, Le Corbusier, when he arrived to New York and saw New York from the first place, from the above, and saw those beautiful towers. But what we can see here also is, of course, Tagus is a very beautiful place for people who already went there, but it's also an obstacle. So this was only possible as soon as we have here the first bridge, because the Tagus used to be the second largest deep water harbor in Europe, because good times, we were the capital of a very large overseas empire by the 60s, and then the war started. But of course the efforts turned all into that very beautiful center, and it had to become very specialized and very industrial. So what we can see here in red is mostly housing, not very good urban settlements, just housing. The public space issue was not actually anything to address. We didn't have that idea of, we had it in the center of the city, of course. But as soon as we came into the 90s, and we are already in the 21st century, another shift started occurring. This was mostly due, I'm not very certain about this. I'm sure that in 10 years we will have a very different perspective about it. But we entered the EU in '86. So as soon as our motorway network started to be enclosed, important high connectivity nodes, for instance here, along these very beautiful coasts, which used to be a place for spending your weekend in very beautiful houses, some of them palaces. But we have here a structure which is just starting to evolve from the viewpoint of knowledge-based economy. So here starts the problem of the city of Lisbon. Because as soon as we have this closed network of highways, the headquarters of companies just shifted to the next municipality. And so did people, because living in the center of the city is very expensive. And at the same time, as most of the European and American cities, of course, the waterfront became also a problem because industrial facilities were not needed anymore, because the harbor strategy shifted. We all know that. It's something we all know. So from this point on, what we can see now, and this is the first image we know about the metropolitan area of Lisbon, really, we did it, is that this area is getting densified as we imagine it would be, because housing is moving towards and approaching those job centers we have there. And lots of areas here, which looked very dispersed, are starting to be densified and closed inside some perimeters. Of course, this is also due to the importance we are giving to open spaces nowadays. Because nowadays we have a completely different approach to the need to protect places that once we didn't recognize as heritage or as important values, even from the viewpoint of economic revenues. So just to introduce you, these are the municipalities of the metropolitan area of Lisbon right now. Just to introduce you to this very preliminary data, I have data from the census from 81, 91, 91, 21, 2001, 2011. I know now that I can say 2011 because someone in Britain, Judith Weiser, will tell you so. In BBC they are telling 2012, so I think I can say 2011. It's okay, isn't it? So, but looking at the numbers, and you can see that the movement of people is this. They are shifting to more and more external belts. And of course, when we look at, for instance, Mafra, there is a very powerful structure, not urban structure, but I would say an agriculture-led community, very important in Portugal, which is also polarizing these peripheral municipalities into other structures. But about the numbers, people are, of course, shifting to other places. So when we look at Lisboa and Barreiro, which are these, Barreiro is this area here, and Lisboa is this one. We lost, I don't know the final figures because these are only preliminary data, but between 1991 and 2001 we lost, I don't know, more or less 40% of population living inside the city, and this is quite dramatic, especially because the headquarters, the money, the companies also moved away. So we have now a quite large problem in dealing with these dynamics, and also this has effects in the metropolitan shaping, of course, and also at the governance level as well, when we look at different levels of planning. So this is something we did several years ago, but which they did and already was introducing this thing relating people with the appearance or the decrease of buildings, and which was starting to show some trends in the metropolitan area of Lisbon. Coming to the idea of urban concepts and ideas for the metropolis and for the city of Lisbon, from the previous presentations, I think I should say that we have a different way of approaching these subjects. Our first regional plan was not approved. Nevertheless, it was accomplished until today, unofficially, but being integrated into the next plans. So this is usual, and I know from my colleagues from very different countries that utterly it becomes to be the common unusual thing to do, because planning is difficult and achieving the results is even more difficult. So when we come to the regional plans, what we can see here is, of course, three main periods. I would focus in the last one, a multi-level planning approach in which urban landscape flexibility tend to cope with something which we are exploring as resilience concepts. So what we are envisaging now is the development of a more integrated management and planning between the regional level and the municipal level. And we are now in the second generation of reviewing, so we have the possibility to do something which we did not before, which is to review from the regional level first and then to the municipal level. What I mean is that from the EU perspective, metropolitan plans are mostly strategical, whereas municipal plans are mostly normative, and they are the armed tool to intervene in the city directly. However, one of the things we start noticing is that, for instance, the development of very regular technologies such as GIS allow us to design even larger areas and to tackle with an entire metropolitan area as if it was a very small and local area, because we are able to interrelate several data coming from very different scopes, from the urban design viewpoint to the demographic dynamics also. So I would say that nowadays both regional and municipal levels are working together. Still, we have a specificity which I'm sure Judith has a completely different example to show, because London is of course very has a very specific government structure which we do not have. You have a mayor for the metropolitan authority. Well, we do not have that. And that's a problem which we are now addressing. What I mean is that the institution that leads with the metropolitan governance is not legitimated by voting. They are nominated. And they resort usually to a regional economics style, whereas at the municipal level, mayors are, of course, legitimated, and a population are very close to those people. So they also resort a lot more to management land use style of planning, and of course to an urbanistic style of planning, which is something very southern. So regarding to, just to enter the topic which I was referring to previously, which was the city of Lisbon becoming a large whole in the middle of the metropolitan area, which is something we should concern about, because it's getting very common in most of our cities. At some point, Catherine Payne said something which I found very, let's say, refreshing. Well, if we look at the regional level only from the strategic planning viewpoint, we will miss the essence of planning, because planning is about space. Planning is spatial. I cannot tell there is a green corridor there and not knowing how large, how long, how big, what trees have it. Is it possible to interrelate with urban land uses or not? So we need to start very quickly addressing the reality of the territory itself. And those documents, especially the ESDP, which introduced these three ideas: sustainability, policy centricism, knowledge infrastructures, and then Lisbon's strategy with the territorial cohesion and competitiveness, are of course looking for that. One, just between brackets, countries in Europe are all very different. So we cannot generalize this. But coming to Lisbon, what we are trying to do, or what the municipality is trying to do, is trying to recapture people and companies, because they need that revenue. So the idea is to take the main railway structure, take advantage of the connectivity with railway, with highways, and to introduce there new polarities, new centralities. And along that, try to bring new couples, new families into the city. Okay. Altogether, the three main systems come from the territorial viewpoint. So the first aspect is that the open space system is very important. It's very important because we don't want, being metropolitan is about urban and non-urban. So we need to design and to resolve those spaces in between. And also from the management viewpoint, the city is offering spaces for kitchen gardens, for instance, and sharing the landscape management with the population, of course. It's a lot more cheaper, and it builds also some social cohesion. the mobility system, as I was addressing before, and of course urban polarities in which the new urban policies could be cleaned on, let's say this way. So basically we will have 7 urban policies. The plan is a lot simpler than it used to be. It doesn't refer to a physical planning based in zoning anymore. It's about designing space. It's about connecting different things. I mean, a highway doesn't need to be ugly. It may be beautiful. It may be utterly the new urban type of the future. We had seen that in Metropolis and other fictional, and Brazil and other films we know. So these are the 7 policies we now have. Look, affordable housing promotion, municipal neighborhoods regeneration, strategies in the face of climate change, just to name a few. And finally, we are able to present you the new master plan, which is now to be approved. This was designed at the scale at 1 to 1,000. And it's simple, and it's manageable, and it has everything. Open space system continuities, the need to address new innovation and international centers, the high-speed train integration should the IMF leaves our country soon enough. I'm sorry, sometimes I need to say things like this. The third bridge, the grower French-German urbanist imagined in 1938, and which we now still don't have. For instance, reconversion and deactivated state functions and facilities. This means military mostly in very central areas of the city for common and urban facilities. So, coming to my concluding remarks, hopefully soon enough, Piotr, I think that we can say that from the epistemological viewpoint, urbs versus rurs doesn't make sense anymore, because we live mostly in places which we call ours and which are not beautiful cities or beautiful city centers, but which become ours. Sometimes by the introduction of new facilities, new public spaces, or by the facility to which we can reach them. So, in a way, I might be being too candid, I don't know, but we are coining a term, our research group, which is fabric space. I'm not sure whether or not this will work in English. But this tries to address this new tapestry. So we are trying to intermingle or interweave this morphological dimension with the strategical and planning dimension, and trying to come to some conclusions. In this light, and of course the open space system has become a pivotal tool for designing the city. This is a tale for another day, as I'm saying here, and you are already getting tired of me. Last year, I told you, I challenged you with this statement that Lisbon was the most beautiful city in the world. Well, it still is, actually. And for the most skeptical, we have now a double confirmation, which several cities in the world get. Besides the acknowledgement of Faro as an immaterial heritage of humanity by UNESCO, this plan I've just shown you was awarded for outstanding urban planning and design. Well, in this context of great difficulty and crisis we are living in. So thank you very much for your attention.